Yeah, I the ones that have propane burner kits, and I'll get to battery burning. A lot of battery burning, and Cody out in your area, Larry out in your area, because we had to. I'll get to that one in a minute. So on the propane burnishes, we predominantly over the last 11 years have been with Betco. I have a real problem with what Betco went to and did, so I'm going away from Betco. They went to a new fuel system. It's causing a problem for us. I don't like it. I don't think it's going to be good for us long term. So unfortunately, I'm making a switch. And I've been going with Aztecs. I've been testing this one for the last 6 months or so. Really working out well. So you're going to see these out in the field. Up and down the East Coast, you've got some old white ones still. Because they're running good. We've kept them. You guys know what I'm talking about, but going forward, for right now, this is what we're going to be looking at. One thing I want to emphasize, and I'm sure it doesn't get done enough in the stores, and we had an issue on Long Island, unfortunately, and Lorene knows exactly what I'm talking about, is the buffers, okay? When the SP is done with a buffer, this muffler is extremely hot, okay? And in the book, technically, they're not supposed to be putting this away under a shelf or up against something for 30 minutes. It's supposed to cool down. They're supposed to leave it, out in the middle of the, away from everything for 30 minutes, and then slide it away. So you need to be really careful. So if you go into a store and you see a lot of stuff hanging near the sides, dust mops, debris or whatever that can fall on any of the buffers, you really need to kind of talk to your SP about that. We haven't had a lot of issues, one in the last 11 years plus that I've been here, thank God. But it is an issue, something that we need to just be thinking about. And again, you guys are my eyes and ears in the stores. So other than my texts when they're in there. So if you can take a peek at that. As far as the buffer, when you're just looking at it, if you were here, I'd do more hands-on touch and feel. But obviously the bonnets need to be cleaned all the time. So if you go in and this bonnet's caked with debris and dirt, it's because your SP is not removing it and cleaning it. They're all pretty much the same, just different sizes. They need to be taken off, washed, and let dry on the shelf. Okay. I have all of these propane burnishes PM'd every 3 months. Okay, so they'll last longer. A lot of the damage I see on them is the throttle cables are broken because they, again, want to get right up against stuff. B, the decks on the machine, all the decks and everything are completely gouged, and the bumpers are broken off because they want to get right underneath everything is up as close as they possibly can as they burnish. So it's just stuff that you want to be aware of, you want to be looking at. Especially this needs to be cleaned because it'll overheat the motor. If you could just, sorry, we have a phone ringing. Other than that,
Bob, I'll be right back.
yeah. Let's leave it. Good. Sorry, guys, are you with me? Is that good? Okay. So on the buffer itself, so as far as the bonnet, and then obviously this handle back here, a lot of them break them and stuff. I have this part. It's a simple 3 screws. Any SP can email me for this. And a lot of them just tend to, they might put the throttle cable on full. They might wrap something around it so they never have to move it again. Don't want to do that because if they inadvertently let go of the buffer, it could take off by itself. So just a safety hazard you want to look at.
Rob, we can't hear you.
Say the buffer's not starting. I'm like, did you check the oil? Sometimes they check it. Oh yeah, it was a little low because the machine will not start if the oil is low. If you want to check the oil, just out of the blue, just pull the cover off, wipe it, put it back down again, pull it back up again, and then you can check the level. Real simple. We don't really have a lot of problem with that. It happens once in a while, but it is something just to be aware of on the buffers. Pretty much the same. This is the same exact engine as that one. It's just a different make and model, so it's got a couple things different. But other than that, it's basically the same motor with everything on it. You have the oil here, bonnet here, throttle cable here. Muffler's back a little bit more. It's a little bit more protected. A little longer, but the SPs tend to be liking this machine. I've had good feedback from this machine on the propanes. One big thing on propanes, as a lot of you know, especially in upstate New York, Christian's seeing a lot of it down in Chicago right now. Not Chicago, excuse me, down in Texas. And Francisco and I have been discussing it with Gus out in Chicago. Okay, so we have a problem, and it ekes its ugly head a lot, where the SP is responsible for filling the propane tanks, and they overfill them wherever they get them filled. You know, I don't know if they're getting 4 or 5 of them at a time filled or whatever, but they're not being bled out, purged properly. So when the tank is done, the person filling it is supposed to purge it. It's supposed to be a little bit below full for expansion, because as it gets cold, the winter time, it gets colder, these tanks will expand. If they're overfilled and they get cold, both of them are a bad scenario. They come in from outside, it's freezing cold, bring this inside for, you know, half an hour or so before they buff. They put it on the machine, they open up the valve, close out the regulator, damages it. Then we get a no start, no run, no start issue. Techs go there, they find the tank in Wegmans where there's extra tanks up in, especially in New York. We'll find tanks overfilled in the store. But if the diaphragm is damaged, wet inside here, then that's from an overfilled tank or a frozen tank. The SP is going to get charged back for that, because that's just unacceptable. Okay? Especially with the amount of times I've been through it with the SPs. But on the newer ones, I talk to them, I'll send them pictures, I keep a record. If it happens again, they're getting dinged either way. It's their responsibility to make sure the tanks are filled properly. If anyone has any questions on that, they can email me. I can send stuff. But again, it usually happens more this time of year, but it can happen any time of year if they have the tanks overfilled and they're not checking it. Okay, I always say fill it up just below F to be safe. Tell the guy to fill it just below F, and we're good. And bring it inside in the wintertime at least 30 minutes before you. Any questions on that?
Yeah, Rob, I'm going to ask some dumb questions. This is Larry.
Go ahead. Never a dumb question.
Purge the propane tank before filling. What do you mean? You run it out?
No, when you take, if you've even taken your gas grill propane tank somewhere to be filled and they fill it, when the guy gets done, if you watch him, he purges it off. When he takes the connection off, he literally lets some gas out to purge it out, so it's not over full. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So if you look at the gauge, George, get in here on the gauge. You see the gauge where it says F and E, you know, full and empty.
Yeah.
If it passed the F line, it's overfilled. So when they pick that tank up, when they hand it to the guy and he brings it back to them, if that line is above the F, it's overfull right away. And he didn't purge it, and they need to check that. Because if that tank comes in here, it can damage the regulator. Okay. So we kind of go through cycles on it where it'll happen in a bunch of stores and then it kind of goes away for a while and then it happens again and then the winter time comes and they get cold. Again, if it's a full tank, even if it's full right to the F and this tank is outside and it's free, you know, it's cold, and without warming it up a little bit, or it was in the back of their car all night, they bring it in and don't just leave it in the store for, 20 minutes or so it kind of warms up. It's kind of like trying to light your gas grill with a cold tank. It don't work. You put it in the machine, you open it up, it's going to throw liquid propane into that regulator, okay? Not a vapor like it's supposed to be. And it's going to damage it. And it might work once or twice, but it's not going to work after that. Okay. And then we're going to get a no start or running rough problem, and I'm going to send a tech in there, and I make the techs take them apart. That diaphragm's damaged, then the SP's getting dinged on it, getting charged back. Okay. Enough of the SPs, especially the ones that have been with us a long time, know enough. I've talked to them enough. I emailed them enough. They know about it. It happens. It really shouldn't. It should be something that they should be checking. They're responsible for filling the tanks. We're not. So they need to be on that. So just, if I email you on this, that's what it's all about. Okay. Just so you're aware of it, of what's happening. Okay. Anything else on the buffers? Any questions on the buffers?
Yeah, the other question I have is, let's say that we find the buffer oil level low. What kind of oil do we put in that?
10, you can put in like a 530 synthetic if you need, if some of the SPs would like a quart or two of oil, because usually they usually just pick up a quart of oil. They can email me directly in between service calls. The techs will leave some at the store if they have extra. I've asked them to leave like a half a quart here and there. But other than that, just a 530 synthetic oil is perfectly fine.
Okay.
And I can ship some out, but again, I'm not going to ship 1,000 bottles out around the country so the SPs can take them home and put them in their lawnmowers. Okay, that ain't happening.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Any other questions on the again? I have these buffers. These buffers are all PM'd every 90 days, and where we have to do emissions, the emissions are done. We don't have to do emission tests. We do have emission controls for safety on every buffer that we have. So if the emissions go out of whack, the buffer will shut down. Okay, that's one feature we have that ABS and a lot of other companies don't have on their buffers. So it's a very good safety feature. But other than that, the other big thing too is obviously changing the pads out on the buffers. We find, I will find, where even on the scrubbers, the SP is not changing the pads out. He's obviously not taking the pads off, or they're supplying the pads to their stores, and they're trying to get every last ounce of that pad out of there because they're obviously trying to save money, and they're hurting the pad drivers. On a scrubber, obviously, if this pad's so thin that you're hitting the pad driver itself, you're going to damage the pad driver. Because again, they're paying for the pads, so they're trying to do it as little as possible. So just, as you're looking through the stores, especially if we're giving them money, make sure there's new pads on the shelf. I do email when the techs send me pictures of pad drivers being damaged. But that happens, and then the tech will go in to do a service on a machine. He tells me there's no new pads in the store. So I'll email the SP directly, ones that I have a good relationship with, obviously. I'll CC you guys on it if I have to. If I feel there's a need, but usually it gets taken care of. But that does happen a lot, so that's something we need, I'd like you guys just to be aware of when you're walking into the store and you're taking a peek in the back room. Especially more so where the SP is supplying the pads. Other than we don't really see it in the Wegmans and stuff like that. Okay?
Okay.
We good with buffers? Yeah, you guys.
I think so.